comes Gooden gonna score the 2 and 1.
Full drive inside. Stop. Hang on a pivot. Turn around. Jump shot is good.
Jordan Battle with a nice spin move. Kicks it down low. Vardon, Big Maple with the finish.
What's up, everyone? It's July already. Bringing you another episode of the Straight Outta WAC podcast. It has been, Derryl, I want to say it's been almost 4 months since we recorded a podcast episode. I took it off last 4 months, been going on vacation. As some of you know, I went to Maine with my wife for anniversary. Just taking a break, playing some softball, umpiring. I've been on the dark side and umpiring softball games, adult slow pitch softball. That's been fun. You don't realize how much you chew out umpires until you're actually on the other side of things. But we're back. We're going to be bringing you weekly episodes, maybe some more than just one a week, as we get ready for November and tip off of the 2022-23 season. As always, I have my partner here, Derryl Trujillo, who covers the women's side of WAC Hoops. Does a great job, and really appreciative of all he's done. He's been busy this off season.
Oh yeah, it's been a busy period out here. Just finished the high school year and ready to jump into another year of covering WAC hoops. I got to cover the CIF softball finals. I had 2 walk-offs in a 5-hour span on final Saturday.
Nice. Well, and with that being said, I'm going to let Derryl introduce one of our newest contributors. GCU fans may recognize her, but I'm going to let Derryl introduce her, and we're going to bring her in here as Derryl introduces her.
So during the off season, I was thinking about adding an extra hand just because of the fact that I also cover local high school sports out here in Southern California, and I might not always have the time to devote to WAC Hoops Digest that I should. So that being said, with approval, and the both of us agreed that our newest contributor will be GCU women's basketball broadcaster Chelsea Mendelson.
And there she is. Chelsea, welcome to the Straight Outta WAC podcast. First ever appearance here.
Thank you for having me. I'm really happy to be a part of WAC Hoops Digest and everything you guys do.
Derryl, I'm going to let you take this over since you were the one that recruited Chelsea to be a contributor on the site.
So should we just go right ahead and jump into what we were laying out?
Absolutely. We got to put her she's on the hot spot right now.
All right, let's jump in.
I got some questions that might make her laugh a little bit, but I'm going to hear what you have to say.
All right. So since we're going to start with our 2022-23 stuff, Chelsea, let's talk about some of the movement in the offseason. 41 players hit the portal. 7 stayed in the conference. But this week it was announced that Josie Williams was the 3rd WAC post player to enter the portal and then find a new home at Louisville. Let's talk a little bit about that, and then Caitlin Harper and Stephanie Vischer finding homes over the offseason.
Yeah, you know what? I think it says a lot about the WAC and what the WAC has become over the last few years and how it's really built itself up to be more in the national spotlight when you're looking at how players could get into Power 5 conferences after being so successful in the WAC. I mean, those 3 players that you're talking about, and let's emphasize Josie Williams since that's the most recent thing. I mean, that really says a lot about the WAC, and she was incredible, arguably one of the best centers in the entire country, let alone in a mid-major and in the WAC. And now she's going to Louisville, who are already in conversation. Last year, they almost made it to the championship. They made it to the Final Four. And I would say this year, once again, they're probably in conversation to repeat a successful season, maybe go all the way. And with adding her to that roster, I think that they make themselves even more of a contender, because when you have post play like that, especially in women's basketball, you are really hard to stop defensively.
And for those of you who did not hear in the offseason, Caitlin Harper and Stephanie Vischer moved from the WAC to the Big Ten together. So let's talk about that a little bit. That's when Michigan State and Purdue get together. I'm going to be looking for those 2 on the floor at the same time.
Yeah, and that's, it was a great matchup to watch in the WAC as well. But when you're looking at it now in Power 5 conferences, and like we said, in the Big Ten and everything like that, when you have a really good post play, and they are great post play. It is really, really fun to watch. And I think all three of those players, Josie Williams included, have really bright futures. And it's going to be really exciting to see how their play can now move to Power 5 conferences against arguably better competition.
As part of that 41 players in the portal, Utah Valley took probably the biggest hit. Josie leaving for Louisville, but Maria Carvalho and Megan Jensen also leaving. Let's talk about that.
Before she goes on about that, Megan Jensen, I had a thought about this. Maybe you two can elaborate more, but it'd be interesting to see. I don't know if I'm on mute or not. I'm not, but it'd be interesting to see what Megan Jensen's reaction was when Josie Williams transferred. Like, she probably thought that Josie Williams was coming back because it was so late in the offseason when Josie transferred or put her name in the portal that she wanted more playing time, so she goes to SUU. I mean, Dan Nielsen's got to be, like, livid because of the fact that, look, had we known Josie was going to transfer, we could have kept Megan Jensen, and so, like, I don't know. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
Chelsea, you can go ahead and start on that one.
I think you have a good point, and I think that like goes back to what we've talked about this whole offseason, which is that the transfer portal is so much different than it used to be, and that really changes the landscape of how these teams approach the offseason and really going into the regular season, because sometimes they don't know if half their roster is going to come back, and especially when you have coaching changes and stuff like that, that makes a big impact on where players want to be. And like you said, playing time. So I think that that's a great point, that they probably would have approached the offseason a little bit differently had they known that she was going to leave. And I think, as you said, that's a huge loss for them. And I think that changes where they're more likely to end up when it comes to the WAC regular season as well as the postseason.
Yeah.
Chelsea, I think we both had them between about 8 and 12, something like that in our
I think so.
rankings.
Look.
I know we were pretty close, like within a spot of each other on most of the teams.
Yeah, but without those two bigs, I mean, and they lose their starting point guard, which, I mean, reports were that it wasn't a bad loss, locker room wise, with Maria going to Utah State, but you lose Josie Williams and Megan Jensen. Like, if you lose one, okay, we can handle it, but they lose both of them. Dan Nielsen's got some work cut out for him. I'm interested to see if he can pull a big to fill that. I don't know that you'll ever find one that'll fill Josie Williams' shoes, but I mean, they got to find something, because that was like 3/4 of your scoring right there between the three of them. So, I mean, you gotta, yeah. I'm not a women's basketball expert like you guys are, but like, I'm a Utah Valley alum, so I follow that side of things, and I don't want to be in Dan Nielsen's shoes right now.
Well, and ironically enough, it is the first day of the July recruiting period too, so that's probably A1 on his list, I would guess.
Yeah, and looking at the rankings that we had, I had UVU at 10 and Derryl had UVU at 9. So we had them pretty much in the middle, lower part anyway. And I think with now losing her, it's not looking great, and hopefully they can, come back and put some good play together. But it's going to be really interesting to see how they approach the season without that post play.
Very true.
I think we also have to hit on Chelsea York, GCU Lopes, Molly Miller again winning the offseason recruiting battle, getting Alia Collins to come over from Chicago State, who now is officially an independent since it is after July 1. They are no longer a member of the WAC, along with Sydney Palma, Evan Lane, and the rest of that recruiting class that she put together.
Yeah, I think GCU, honestly, I think I have them at 2, but I would argue that they could really go all the way this year. And I tweeted that out. I was like, this might be GCU's year. And I think a big part of that is Alia Collins. I think that she is incredible. I think she's going to be one of the best players in the country. She put up nationally ranked stats last year in steals amongst freshmen. And offensively, she's fantastic. Defensively, she's fantastic. And obviously, when it comes to Molly Miller's squads, she really emphasizes that defense. And I think she's going to fit into that system so well. I think she's going to be the new star at GCU.
What is it about Molly Miller's recruiting tactics where it's almost like she basically says, if I can't beat him, I'm going to go recruit him? I mean, not that she couldn't beat UTRGV, but she brings in Amara Graham last year. This year, it's Sid Palma from CBU, who, GCU's had, the last 2 years has had some run-ins with. I know that last year in the WAC media days when I asked Lane Lord about the whole transferring in conference, I think, and Derryl, you can remind me if I'm wrong about this. His response was no comment.
Yeah, it was. I remember that.
And I'm pretty sure that other coaches probably feel the same way. But what is it about Molly Miller pulling in these other recruits from schools inside the WAC, Chelsea? I mean, what are your thoughts on that?
As someone who has interviewed her quite a bit and talked to her quite a bit, I can tell you a big part of it is who she is as a person. And I used to be a player, so I know what I look for in a coach. And she is everything that I would want in a coach. She's a former player. She's the most highest winning percentage of any coach in Division I history. And she is just fantastic as a person, outside off the court. She just has a very bubbly personality. You can see it in every interview that she is just, a great human being. And she really just emphasizes team chemistry. She has the whole team over at her house all the time, hanging out with her and her family. And, if I was a player, that would really pull me in. And if you're already in the WAC, you're already seeing that when you go to play against her. And so that's definitely a big pull. It's just who she is, let alone her great coaching tactics.
Chelsea, you talk about GCU's title aspirations. Sydney Palma is going to be if she's the three-point shooter of 2020, 2021, where she led the WAC in three-point percentage at 40+%, then GCU's got a great shot at it. But they have to shed this label of being offensively erratic that I used last year when they trounced CBU at GCU Arena.
Yeah, and I was actually commentating that game, and it was an interesting game, we'll say that. And I think GCU did have a lot of inconsistencies when it came to their offense. And I think that was a big reason that they wanted Sydney Palma, as you said, because she is just she is the opposite of that. She's very consistent from, especially the 3-point line. She shot 44.7% from 3 last year. And I think when it comes to just simply offensive fundamentals, she brings something to the table that GCU was kind of lacking last year and was a big part of why they weren't able to get over that hump. And so I think with her and with Alia Collins and with a whole bunch of new players and Dom Phillips coming back as well, I think that their offense is really going to be the opposite of what it was last year. And I think that's going to be a big part of them being able to contend.
So today is July the 6th. So I guess we can welcome our new members to the conference, right, Kyle?
Yeah. As of July 1st, Southern Utah, UT Arlington, new members of the WAC. I mean, to me, those are really good I don't want to say really good basketball schools because UT Arlington had a rough year last year, but their women's team went to the NCAA tournament, won the Sun Belt this year, and went to the NCAA tournament. And I can't remember who it was that they almost knocked off. It was Iowa State or something, right?
Iowa State in Ames.
Yeah, almost knocked off the Cyclones in the first round. And their men's team struggled this year, and they're going to have a whole new roster again this year. This next year in their first year in the WAC. And then Southern Utah, Todd Simon, his men's team, got 3 of his stars back, including Tevian Jones, so he's really happy there. And they're going to be competitive, super competitive on the men's side. On the women's side, you guys probably know more about that, so elaborate on that, and we'll get into the men's side here in a little while.
On the women's side, we weren't really sure what Southern Utah was going to bring back off of that Big Sky runner-up team. Just because the listed roster on the website has, I think it was 8 players. And then we got a message on Twitter that said they picked up a transfer from Idaho State that was first team all Big Sky. That certainly changes the way we'll look at Southern Utah. But for what we had available to us when we did those preseason rankings, the biggest thing was just the numbers and the experience they lost with Kinsley Barrington going over to CBU. That was the biggest thing for me.
Yeah, and I felt the exact same way. And when you look at, Texas Arlington as well, I actually had them at 3 and you had them at 2. So we're expecting them to be able to play really well, really well going into the season. It's gonna be really interesting to see what these new WAC teams can do. But going back to Southern Utah, like you said, they had some big losses, but they also were able to kind of make up for that. So they're kind of a mystery, and I'm really not sure where they're going to end up. But that's what happens when when a team switches to a new conference. You never really know how they're going to line up against their new enemies, so to speak.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's necessarily just moving to a new conference. I think it's year after year. For the most part, we don't know what we're going to get because turnover is so high right now in college athletics, with the transfer portal being so easy to get into and to get picked up. We see it in the women's side. Obviously, we've seen it on the men's side. I mean, think about it. Teddy Allen's gone. Fardo Zamak transfers to Texas Tech. Darian Trammell has gone to San Diego State. Savion Flagg came in from Texas A&M for Sam Houston last year. Joe Pleasant is back at ACU after spending a year at Wichita State where he didn't put up the same numbers he did when he was with the Wildcat. Like, it's so wild, not just on men's basketball, but in women's basketball too, like you were talking about. It's so hard to predict. I know a certain fan base will say that their team is always number one. We can all agree on that. No matter who they have, and the fact that they have a whole new roster, even though it's got some talented players on it, with a whole new coach, how am I supposed to put that number one over a team that has nearly all of its starters returning and was right there in the mix for knocking them off in the WAC tournament? It's so hard. And that's what makes it intriguing and fun and awesome to talk about. And, that's why we do what we do, right? I mean, that's why, WAC Hoops Digest came about, was to talk about these kind of things. And, we'll get to it, as we end this episode later, that, what are some of the things we're looking forward to this season. But let's talk, Chelsea, I want to ask you, how did you end up at GCU? What was the draw there? You got other schools, Arizona State. Just very curious.
Well, I was actually born and raised just 15 minutes north of GCU. So I drove by the school, saw a lot of stuff from the school all the time. And that's just kind of how it is when you grow up in Phoenix, especially the last few years, when they became D1 and they were making more splashes in, obviously basketball. They don't have a football team. But my previous major was cybersecurity, and they have one of the fastest growing technology departments in the country. And I actually met someone just by chance that used to work for GCU and helped build up the program. And so he kind of was like, if you're going to cybersecurity, GCU is a really good school to go to. And obviously I'm not doing cybersecurity now. I'm majoring in broadcasting, which makes more sense for this. But that was because of the job I have at GCU, which is I'm an on-air talent and producer for GCU TV. So I do all the sports, not just basketball. And I fell in love with it as soon as I got the job. I applied for it on a whim and just hope for the best because I've always loved sports, and I was following GCU sports, since I've been there anyway. I'm going into my junior year, and I just happened to get it, and I was really excited about it. And that kind of started this whole journey to put me here. And I'm really thankful to my boss, Al Porteous, and also Barry Butel, who kind of runs all the broadcasting and sports stuff at GCU, who's kind of taken me under his wing to mentor me as well. And I'm just really thankful to be where I'm at and be able to do stuff like this with you guys.
I want to ask you, and I'm going to put you on the spot here. This is one of my first questions I thought of when, we were going to have you on this first episode. When you see people say GCU students get paid to attend games, or the kind of, I guess this might be a nicer word that you see on social media towards, the Lopes or the Havocs or whoever, what does that do to you mindset wise? And what are your thoughts on that? I'm very interested.
I think generally and I consider myself a Havoc I think generally all of the Havocs think that that's just really funny. And I think that it shows what we can do, because they're like, oh, if they can pack that arena, they must be getting paid. And it's not that. We wait outside in line for a week in tents because we want to get as close to the court as possible. And I haven't personally done that, but there's plenty of people that do. And you can look it up. There's plenty of pictures and videos of all these tents on the grass right outside the arena for a week. And I don't think you could pay them enough money to sit in the Arizona heat in a tent for a week. And no, we don't get paid at all. I think the only people you could say are getting paid is Pep Band, because they have scholarships. And like, programs like that where they get scholarships, or if I'm getting paid, when I get paid to broadcast it. But the whole Havocs as a whole do not get paid a cent, and they just go because they love the atmosphere. I mean, the pregame stuff, if you've seen it, if you've been there, is unlike any atmosphere in college sports anywhere. And I think in the next, take a couple more years, but I think the rest of the country is going to figure that out, that GCU just loves their sports and loves basketball. And that's just the end of it. It's not any more complicated than that.
On mute. I was on mute while I was talking where my lips were moving and you couldn't hear me. No, I like it. I've been there a couple times, and my perspective is different than others because I'm not a GCU alum or tied to GCU at all. And I mean, it is one of the best atmospheres. I mean, my dad came away a couple times when we've been down there to watch a game. When Utah Valley was down there, and he just marveled at it, that it's just something you don't see every day. And and that's. I think a lot of schools want to get there. CBU tries to do similar things. Utah Tech now, they're doing great things. Southern Utah, that place will be packed when Utah Valley comes to town or when Utah Tech comes to town, and vice versa. I mean, it's kind of a I don't know what the word is that I'm looking for, but it's kind of a example of what schools kind of want to have with their students. I'm not saying they want to have the whole show, but they want to have that student section, right? I mean, that's kind of what schools want to have to fill their arenas.
Yeah, and other teams hate it. Specifically when New Mexico State came to town the last time, I was lucky enough to be working at that game, and it's just very tense. And that was the game that Teddy Allen dropped like 33, I think, or something, and on some insane shooting splits. And the Havocs were letting him hear it, and he was letting the Havocs hear it. And it was really interesting to see. And I talked to him after the game, and I just told him, like, hey, good game, and especially, against the Havocs that are trying to make it as hard as possible to play like he did. He did it anyway. And then he went and did it again in the NCAA tournament. But yeah, just the Havocs try their best to make it hard, and the players like Teddy Allen that can get through that is really impressive. And it's unlike any other basketball environment I've ever been in, because I grew up going to Phoenix Mercury and Phoenix Suns games, and it's insane. It's so much different, and I don't think any school can duplicate it as hard as they try to.
We're not promoting GCU. We're just asking the GCU student, broadcaster, what's going on. So don't take it like we're putting GCU out there. I just want to make that very clear, a disclaimer for our fans. Derryl, we're going to end this episode real quick. What's something you're looking forward to in this 2022-23 season? And we'll probably circle back to this every episode almost up until the season tips off.
I want to see how our two new teams do on the women's side, in SUU and UTA. Especially UTA coming in off that, scare of Iowa State in the NCAA women's tournament. Fact that they won the Sun Belt tournament. I want to see how Sharika Wright's first team does in the WAC. Can they knock off SFA? Can GCU knock SFA off the top, or can CBU return to prominence with a basically rebuilt roster after the departures of Harper, Oleda, Thomas, Palma, Dale, that entire group basically?
Chelsea, what about you?
I mean, I'm on the same page. I'm really excited to see just how, really, it seems like every team has an almost entirely new roster, for give or take. And so I'm really excited to see how these players that weren't in the WAC last year do, how the players that were in the WAC that are on different teams do. And that's just for the women's side. The men's side is pretty much the same story. And so when it comes to men's and women's basketball, I think there's a toss-up for who could win it all. And I think it'll just be really exciting to watch and to see how the rankings shake up and if we have any big upsets and how they go into the regular and postseason.
So I have a couple things. The first one is to see if Mark Kellogg can continue to have that, what did he say it was, sustained success, I believe is what he called it. You know, I mean, they just have won so much under him. You lose Stephanie Visser, but you still have Zaya Nugent, who is the WAC tournament, most valuable player. So some big things there. I want to see if they have that on the women's side. I don't think, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, there's not as much parity on the women's side as there is on the men's side. I think that there's SFA, at least this year now, with the departures from CBU and Utah Valley and stuff, I think it's SFA, GCU, UTA, and then kind of a fall off, quite a bit on the women's side. Whereas on the men's side,
Abilene Christian in the top group there, and then there's going to be a little bit of a drop.
Yeah, but on the men's side, like we had 7 teams that had 20+ wins last year, right? Sam Houston was right there with 19. I mean, Utah Valley was the 7 seed at the men's tournament in Las Vegas. They had the best player one of the top 2 players in the conference on their squad too. Like, that's crazy to me. And all ACU did, all GCU did, all California Baptist, who was I believe they were the 9 seed last year, all they did was go out in the transfer portal and get crazy with it. Like, there's so much parity on the men's side, especially with Chicago State no longer in the mix, especially with Incarnate Word not in the mix. You'll have UTRGV down there, but they've got some players on their roster. Alvin Brooks is finally getting his. So I'm interested to see the parity play out on the men's side. I really think there is a ton of it. I don't think one team is going to run away with it like, some people think, because New Mexico State, while they've got talent, how are they going to gel? How are they going to adjust? I mean, you got a lot of JUCO transfers on that squad that are good players, but there's a lot of other parts than just showing up, if that makes sense. They're going to put in the work. And we've seen it and they go to the Bahamas for or is it Bahamas somewhere for a summer trip together to play some ball. So that'll help. But I just think there's so much parity that I'm interested to see, that 2022-23 season when it tips off, how that's going to play out. So look, everybody, subscribe to the Straight Outta WAC podcast on Podbean. You can follow it on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Go to subscribe on the page, the YouTube page, WAC Hoops Digest, so you don't miss any of these episodes as well as any live shows that we do and other videos that we'll have from traveling and things or at games and so forth. But make sure you follow us. Next week, we're going to start our team previews. We're going to go 1 team a week until the beginning of November when the tip-off starts. Next week, it's Abilene Christian Week. We'll be bringing you the previews of both teams, both the men's and women's teams, interviews with both Julie Goodenough, the women's head coach, Brett Tanner, the men's head coach, and we'll see about, other stuff that we can put out. But be on the lookout for it. Go to WAC Hoops Digest, sign up for a free account, start something on the discussion board, whatever. Chelsea, Derryl, any last words?
No, I'm excited to get this year rolling. And Chelsea, I'm sure you feel the same. It's going to be another great year in the WAC. And we're going to show why we're one of the top mid-major leagues in the country.
Absolutely. I'm really excited to get back into it. I miss watching college hoops already. And it feels like March Madness was yesterday. So let's get going. Well,
and let's hope that no other craziness with conference realignment happens between now and November. But we'll see you on the next episode of the Straight Outta WAC podcast. Enjoy the rest of your week.